It's 11 o'clock and we will get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Larry Jewell from the Edmonton Pride Seniors Group. It is November whatever day of November it is. And I thank you all for attending our weekly Aging with Pride discussion group for 2S LGBTQ A plus seniors and allies. We're now in our third season, and we're grateful as well to our partners, SAGE and Pride Center of Edmonton. Before I introduce our speaker here, I must acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our lives. You already realize that the session will be recorded for future use. If you don't want your image used, please simply turn off, close your video feed. And now it's a great pleasure to welcome back Dusko Trivic, who talked to us last year and who is going to give a pair of talks this week and 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to simply turn it over to Dusko to make his presentation, and as usual, there'll be a Q&A and discussion afterward. We'd ask that you hold your questions and comments until Dusko has finished his talk, if you would be so kind.
Well, thank you very much for having me again here. It's a pleasure to participate in something like this. I enjoy doing these little teaching / seminar / fun things. So for you that don't know me, my name is Dusko Trivic. I work for Memories Funeral Home and Dignity Memorial Funeral Homes in general. I am originally from Croatia, immigrated in Canada in 1995. And joined this profession after my wife died 7 years ago, because I wanted to have an opportunity to actually share some of the, dispel some of the myths about the funerals and make it a little bit more approachable. For people that actually know me personally, they say that I bring fun and put fun in funerals. I don't know if that's possible, but we try to kind of keep it informative and light. So again, thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen now. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit different from the last one. It's going to be even less serious, if that's even possible. So I'm just going to share the screen and we'll go from there. And we're going to put that from beginning. There we go. So myths and truths about pre-planning funerals. My personal information is on the screen there, so if anybody has any questions that they want to ask in private, not while we're sharing here with the group, feel free to do so, and I'm going to put that screen back after. So the first one would be, first thing that we're going to talk about is going to be, think about it as things that people are thinking of, that they know about how to organize a funeral and what happens if some of these things are missing. So question is kind of on the screen. It said, I have a will, is that enough? What do you guys think? Do you think that just having a will is the only thing that, I see people shaking their heads saying no, no, no. So what would be the downside of having a will that's not completed? Or let's say if you're having a will that's been done 20 years ago.
Not your current wishes?
Things can change, your executors can change, it can be a whole bunch of different things. But having a will is 100 times better than not having one at all. Simply because if there's no will, then the issues are getting a little bit more complicated as far as the funeral home is concerned. If there is no will, we have to follow some sort of a pecking order, if you will. I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but there is a very strict guideline that we have to do when it comes to honoring and following somebody's wishes. There would have to be, first and foremost, would be your spouse, if you have one. If there's no spouse, the responsibility for dealing with somebody's estate and planning a funeral falls down to the parents. If the parents are passed, then it goes down to living children, oldest child first, and so on and so forth. So by having a will, you're eliminating all that kind of stuff. I'm really not sure if there's any other issues that we can have with that, but I can tell you a lot of different horror stories for people not having wills done up, and how that complicates things. There is a case that we're dealing with right now that the family is fighting the common law spouse because they're arguing who's going to take care of the deceased person, who's going to have the control of the body and the disposition. They didn't have the clearest of I think we're still on, there you go. They didn't have the clearest common law situation even sorted out, so that was kind of causing problems.
I have her will plus a power of attorney plus her
Yes.
enduring power of attorney.
Just like the will takes care of things after a person
Yeah.
passes. The power of attorney, enduring power of attorney, and the medical instructions that you leave with your green sleeves and different things that the
Yeah.
hospitals are providing are very important because they take care of all your affairs before you pass. So that would be the biggest difference in some of these things. We're going to touch more on the wills and the power of attorney paperwork and stuff like that in 2 weeks when we do a joint session with an actual estate lawyer. A very nice lady is going to join me here, and she's going to talk about a little bit more about that kind of stuff. One of the things that I get questioned a lot about that, and what causes people to have some hesitation about pre-planning things for themselves, is what if you go out of business? What's going to happen with my money, with my arrangements, if Memory's Funeral Home doesn't exist anymore? So some 20, 30 years ago, the federal government of Canada encountered this issue because a lot of funeral homes were actually going out of business due to various circumstances. It could be like a small operation that was, nobody can inherit that, so the people who are going out of business and losing that money. So government stepped in, and now when you do a pre-need contract, you're signing a contract between 3 different parties. So one party would be the family, the person that's planning for themselves or some family member. The second party would be a funeral home, to which the contract is originally assigned to. And the third party is an insurance company that's holding the money until the person passes. That is when the monies are actually released to the funeral home. So it basically guarantees that your money is going to be there when it's needed, and it allows the funeral home to actually freeze the pricing. So if you do that when you're 50, 60, 70 years old, you're saving money in the long term. So that would kind of be that myth that, like we're moving, we're closing down, none of that stuff really applies. If something does happen, let's say that Dignity Memorial Funeral Homes, for some strange reason, goes out of business. We have almost 3,000 locations throughout North America, so chances of us going out of business is unfortunately slim to none. Because unfortunately, people will continue dying. There is no question about that. But if you sign a pre-need with a smaller funeral home and they close or something happens to them, they burn down like Hainstock's did 10 years ago, right? One of our funeral homes. because the funds are held by the insurance company, you receive an insurance policy certificate. And that certificate can be moved to any funeral home in US and in Canada. So there is no reason to panic or, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? The money is always going to be there when you and the family need it. This is another one that's kind of a little bit of a myth. Is cremation cheaper than burial? Short answer is yes. Yes, only if you are planning a direct cremation, which means there's going to be no service whatsoever. A person will pass away, we'll go and pick them up, we'll get the document signing, we'll get the death registered with the government, get the permits, we'll do the cremation and release the ashes back to the family. So that is definitely the cheapest option that exists out there. If you're planning on having any kind of service, then the prices kind of even out a little bit. Obviously, there is a difference between cremation and the burial, because for one you need a casket, you need a burial plot, for the other one you don't, and things like that, right? Now, recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, there has been a lot of things, and I'm sure you guys have seen that in the papers and stuff. Funeral homes are advertising cremations for like $800, $1,000, things like that. Those are definitely available, but the biggest difference is that you cannot pre-plan for anything like that. Those options, those pricing options only exist when a person dies. Then the family or the executive will contact one of these low-cost providers, and at that time they would pay the price that exists at that time. When you're pre-planning something like that, again, you can do that with memories, you can do that with Colin McKinley, you can do that with any funeral home. Prices are going to be higher because they're guaranteed for 10, 20, X amount of years in the future, right? So that would kind of be the easiest explanation for stuff like that. Things are changing these days, like, and I don't know, I think I chatted a little bit about that last time. You don't have to think about disposition, meaning burial, being still in a very traditional way. So you can actually send your cremated remains in space. You can actually organize a family and friends to have a firework display with your cremated remains being part of that fireworks display. You can choose to have your remains buried in a coral reef somewhere in the off coast of Vancouver or somewhere. Like the options are numerous, right? And I think my friends at the cemeteries would kind of argue with that because that's taking away from what they do. I think that the way that we are thinking about a tribute to our loved ones is changing somewhat. Like, you don't have to have a single place where you're actually going to go and once a year bring a rose. You can have that image in your mind constantly. You don't need that one singular place, right? What if you pass away on vacations? Hopefully, Jan, you're listening. I'm joking. Obviously, I don't want that to be an option ever. But there are things that you can choose to do to kind of eliminate that problem. The reason why I said problem is because simply from a financial standpoint, if you pass away in a foreign country and you want to bring your body back home, the price is exuberant, very expensive, depending obviously on how far it is and that kind of stuff, but it can cost up to $10,000, $12,000, $50,000, right? So to eliminate that problem, there is a thing that's called travel and transportation protection. So a lot of funeral homes have that. It's a one-time cost. I believe it's $495 plus tax. You purchase it once, and it's available for as long as you're alive. Something happens, God forbid, right, while you're on vacation or visiting family in Europe, or they wanted to see a Great Wall of China, and then in China, bring home a souvenir. All your family would have to do is contact the funeral home. Funeral home makes all the arrangements with the embassy and with the funeral home in the foreign country, and we bring you home. Generally, our company, the way we do it is we bring the whole body home. So we will actually arrange for embalming to be done in a foreign country according to our specifications, for one simple reason. We want to make sure that your family is going to have a chance and opportunity to say a proper goodbye to you in person, not to a 5 pounds of ashes that's going to come from China or somewhere else, right? We don't charge anything extra for that. It's just part of extended service that we do. So that's kind of, there are options that you can actually get that kind of insurance through your credit cards, especially. But the difference with those ones is that you have to purchase it every time you go on a trip, right? So this would be a one-time purchase that kind of takes care of all that kind of stuff. This is a beautiful picture. It must be Greece. I think so.
No.
It's not Croatia, because I would recognize that. So there you go. This talks a little bit about that. So that travel protection is actually valid as soon as you are 100 kilometers away from home. When you sign up with the funeral home, the normal transportation and pickup from the place of passing takes care of that initial cost, right? So there's no need for that. Oh, I have insurance. Why do I need to prepay for my funeral? I was just dealing with that question yesterday, actually. This is one of those things, like, especially for younger people. First of all, younger people are not really necessarily thinking about having any life insurances, because we all think we're invincible, right? Until, like myself, you have a heart attack 2 years ago. But that kind of gets the whole noggin kind of thinking, say, I should do something. But anyway, the general difference between prepaying for a funeral and using the life insurance money would be that your life insurance policy is, first of all, fixed, meaning that it's not going to increase with time. So if you have a $250,000 policy, or $100,000 policy, or $20,000 policy that you kind of purchased with purpose of paying for the funeral, that $20,000 policy, by the time you get ill and do pass, might not be enough. If you actually do the pre-planning and prepay for it, that price never changes. So you can use your life insurance policy to leave it to your kids, to your grandkids, to your siblings, to donate it to a good cause, a charitable organization, things like that. Instead, if you don't do anything, the funeral costs continue to grow. They double every 8 to 10 years. So that means that they're going to be eating that much into your life insurance policy. So by the time you are no longer with us, that insurance policy might not be $100,000. It might only be 70 because you spent 30 on this. That would be the biggest difference. The only other thing that I can tell you is that, unfortunately, the funeral homes do not carry accounts receivable. So the funeral homes generally require, they want to be paid at least shortly after the funeral service is provided, or in many cases even before. So we cannot wait for 2 weeks, for 6 weeks, for 8 weeks, for X weeks, X number of the weeks until the insurance company actually pays out the life insurance policy. Right? So that's something to be considered as well. So this talks a little bit about, oops, did we not change it? There we go. So I chatted a little bit about this stuff, even the last time when we talked about that. biggest advantages of pre-planning would obviously be locking in today's pricing, having the send-off done in a way that you want it done, not leaving that responsibility to somebody who might not necessarily have an idea about what you want, right? Even if you choose to have just a no service option with a direct donation, that person that's going to be in charge of your affairs, the executive or somebody in your life, they still need to know what to do with the ashes, right? So you're by dealing with these kind of things ahead of time, you're eliminating that. One of the things that I can tell you is that usually people will do this for two reasons. If you're practical like myself, I would like to save as much money as possible. So I'm thinking from a financial standpoint. And I joined this profession for emotional reasons because my wife pre-planned everything for herself. So when she did pass away eventually, I didn't have to do a single thing. I just called the funeral home and that was it. That's where my involvement. Well, I had to sign a few things, right? But I mean, that's what it. I didn't have to make any major decisions. Probably the most important thing is, and I cannot emphasize this enough, by doing it ahead of time, you're actually eliminating a possibility of being taken advantage of. Unfortunately, this is a sales profession, if you will, what I'm doing. Not everybody has their morals and ethics codes engraved in their mind like I do. So people train salespeople in funeral industry how to take advantage of a grieving family, right? Oh, sir, but don't you think that your wife looked so beautiful in this white casket that just so happens to be $10,000, right? That kind of stuff, right? So if you want to eliminate any of these possibilities to happen, pre-planning is definitely recommended. And I'm not saying that for you guys that know me, I couldn't care less if I'm going to get anybody to sign a contract with me or not. I just want to make sure that you understand how important that is. So there's a couple other things here, like obviously the contracts that you sign with any kind of funeral home, especially with Dignity Memorial, they are transferable anywhere in North America because we have, like I said, over 3,000 locations. We also have things like children and grandchildren protection. What that is that it means that any kind of a package that you chose as a service for yourself, God forbid something happens to kids or grandkids or even nephews in certain circumstances, our company will provide the family with the exact same service you chose for yourself completely free. We're the only funeral home that actually offers something like that. So we're not here just to make money and to do this kind of stuff. We really care about the people that we work with. So, and let's see. Dignity Memorial, this is a little bit about us. I think the only thing that's kind of worth mentioning is that we actually have 6 locations in Edmonton. So Memories, where I'm from, Hainstock's on the south side, and then we have locations in Stony Plain, Leduc, Barhead, and Fort Saskatchewan. So enough to cover the Edmonton area and the greater Edmonton area. I have to take this off. We help create remembrances that reflect that. So, and this is again some of our differences that we have comparing to some other funeral homes. Compassion Helpline would be one that I would like to mention to you guys. It's basically a free grief counseling. Grief counseling that's available 24 hours a day. There's no interruption, which is especially important. If you lose somebody that you care about at 2 in the morning, chances are there's not going to be anybody around that you can share those feelings that you might have, right? These guys are always available. We actually provide counseling in pretty much every major language in the world, Tagalog, Hindu, Mandarin, just to name a couple of them that are not so specific as English and Croatian. We also provide aftercare services. So at each location that we have, there is somebody like myself who's going to sit down with the executor or with the surviving spouse and do all the necessary government applications to cancel pensions, apply for survivor's pension, apply for CPP death benefit, canceling of healthcare. We do land title transfers. It's all part of the service that we do. So there's a lot of different things that are included in all this kind of stuff. So everybody here is going to receive the complimentary package. The package is going to have this wonderful book that we have. It's called Personal Planning Guide. Folks that are joining us online are going to get a digital copy on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, right, Eric? So the Personal Planning Guide is basically a booklet that will help you record your wishes and some of the important questions that are going to need to be answered when a person dies. One that I like to kind of mention just to, I can almost guarantee you that my sons have no idea what my mother's maiden name was, just because, like, the two monkeys never really paid attention when we were talking about during Thanksgiving dinners and stuff like that. So I like to record as much as I can in that kind of book. It helps because your executor might not necessarily know all that information that we need. There is about 88, 90 questions that the funeral directors need answering when a person dies, and that book helps answer most of it. Right? And book is designed to also help you maybe mention a friend that you had 20 years ago in Croatia that my kids have no idea how to get in touch with. So I would like them to know that information and be able to let my friends back home know that I passed. There's also a page that's fairly touching because it's kind of prompting you to do a personal letter to your loved ones. Very often we have regrets when somebody is about to die, especially if it happens quickly. We regret the chance to actually say our last goodbyes and leave a message for our loved ones, right? So there is a little prompt in the booklet that actually prompts you to do that. It can be very touching for the family to see that, especially, I don't know, I mean, if I would have died after my heart attack a couple of years back, I would have never had a chance to tell my boys everything that I wanted to tell them, right? So I know it might be a little bit morbid to think about it in those terms, but when a family actually discovers that personal letter, it's priceless. Priceless. So again, my information is here on the screen. This is just a sample of a couple of pages. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending. We've reached the end of of my presentation. Now there's going to be some time here for questions. And should I stop sharing now?
Please.
Yes.
Okay. So, one, thank you so much. That's really very, very informative and done in a not morbid way. I really do enjoy injecting life and humor into that. The one question that I have is that lately, in the last, I would say, 10 years, seeing more and more the life memorial as opposed to the formal funeral.
Yes.
And that may be arranged by the family, or it may be arranged by the funeral home. Is that a trend that you're seeing and that you think is going to increase over the coming years?
Definitely, yes. definitely yes. We've had many examples of memorial services or services of remembrances that were vastly different from anything that I'm used to from back in the day back in Croatia or even here. Generally speaking, like if you can, first of all, you cannot generalize these answers, right? They're very personal, right? But you're only limited with your imagination in anything that you can do. And the funeral directors are becoming more funeral planners, not the grave diggers and undertakers from the past. So we are trained to listen primarily and try to fulfill any wish that you might have. So if we sense that the family is adventurous, different, that wants to do something out of the ordinary, we'll help them do that. So that's why I was mentioning the fireworks at the beginning, things like that, because the older ways are kind of disappearing with the younger generations coming forward and taking care of. Of course, like my kids are going to respect my wishes, and your executor is going to respect your wishes. But if you want to do something that's going to be extravagant and out of the ordinary, why not? If that's you, right?
I think I see that Michael has a question, and so I'll ask him to go ahead. I just wanted to say one thing about that. I know that for my family, after our mother passed, we decided to wait a month. And it allowed us to work through all of the emotions and that sort of thing. So for us, it was an advantage. For other people, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I'd ask Michael, you have your hand up. Please go ahead and ask a question.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation and some of the points that you raised. I wanted to ask if I choose to be cremated and put in a little box in a mausoleum, does one deal with the mausoleum and the cemetery directly, or do you deal with a funeral home? Or can you explain how that might all work?
Okay, so you have a couple of things. There are three ways that happens. So if you're dealing directly with the mausoleum cannot do the cremation because they are not a funeral home; they're a cemetery. If you deal with memories, for this example, memories does not own a cemetery, so we cannot help you with the mausoleum part of it, right? And the third part would be to find a cemetery and a funeral home in one, like say West Lawn, right? West Lawn on the west side of the city, it has a funeral home and a cemetery, so they can help with that. The disadvantage of dealing with somebody like that directly is that you're going to end up paying more. So if you deal with memories, for example, for your cremation, and with City of Edmonton or with Holy Cross Cemetery for the urn placement, you'll save some money.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Do we have Larry? You've got a question.
Two things, if I may. Firstly, to comment on the letter being written in a slightly different circumstance. My mother died of a dementing illness, so she was aware that she wasn't going to be able to communicate. And very formally, and I give her full marks for courage, she said goodbye to the family members. And far from being morbid, it's probably my finest memory of my mother. But I also had a question, totally unrelated. Seems to be one of the big generational differences is the approach to environmental issues and environmentally conscious funerals or green funerals or whatever you wish to say. Can you talk at all about those?
Sure. The things did change in the last little while. I should update this thing with cremation being another myth that I should add in that. to say that the cremation is ecologically bad. Not as bad as people think. But it's changing now because the green burials are becoming more and more prominent, if you will. So cemeteries are catching up with that. Funeral homes are catching up with that trend slowly. It is not as widely popular as it should be, maybe. And I don't know what the reasoning for that is. It's done in a very simple manner. Like you can be buried in so-called green burial in a shroud or in a very simple casket. Casket does not cannot be there cannot be any metals, any artificial dyes or colorings or lacquers. None of that stuff is allowed. So it would have to be like a plain wood or wicker casket, things like that, right? Naturally made. You cannot have an embalming done. Strictly forbidden because the chemicals that we put in the body when we are doing the embalming are not really eco-friendly, right? They don't disappear anytime soon. So those would kind of be the little bit of a difference. Can you still organize a traditional burial and make it green? Yes. It would have to be done quicker for the simple reason that the embalming is not done. So our body can deteriorate much quicker than if we do the embalming. Right now, the cemeteries how they're handling the green burials is that they would actually provide the family or your loved ones or whoever is left behind with a GPS coordinate. And coordinate is going to say where the body is actually buried within the cemetery. And then each cemetery has like a little garden, if you will, memorial garden that would put you would put a simple plaque in there, and it's like a communal garden. So there can be 100 names in there, right, saying that these are the people that actually did the green burial, right? So that's kind of how the cemeteries here in Edmonton are handling that. There is a couple of other green options that are available in the United States that are not available here yet. Composting being one of them. The way they're doing it in States is just a little bit weird to me, but I mean, the body is given to the funeral home that specializes in this kind of stuff. They're put in specific containers filled with dirt and that kind of material, and they're placed in, like, picture it like a Costco, right? The Costco has those huge big shelves. Each compartment is placed into its own place, and then the family, after a body has been decomposing for a year, actually gets 25 or 35 pounds of compost. You can put in your garden and grow roses. Right, so I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. Right, how would you do it's not available in Canada, so I'm not really even sure how that would work. Would you have a service first and then we put the body in that, or you having a little bit of a service of remembrance after? I don't know. But those are kind of things that. Things are going to change, Larry, and I'm sure, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be way different. It has to.
I see Joan has got her hand up. Joan, go ahead, ask a question.
Oh, yeah, there's a hand.
Hi, Dusko. Nice to see you again. Still alive. I'm wondering about, does your funeral home actually act as an executor? Like, do you ever take that role, or is that already done by the time you start dealing with people?
We do not take that role on us. Unfortunately, I wish that the law would be so flexible to actually allow us. I think that the reason why law doesn't allow that is because it could be seen as a conflict of interest. right? I can investigate that a little bit more and let the guys here know what that legal reasoning for that is. Switching up the land titles, it's as far as we can go. And we can do that only because I'm a commissioner of oath as well. If I wasn't, then we were not able to do even that service. There are places that are associated with banks and law firms that will actually take on the role of an executor. But unfortunately, it depends on the circumstances, right? Like if a person has no family or estranged family or anything of that nature, then it makes sense to have a bank or a law firm or somebody act as an executor to make sure that your affairs are closed. Why I said unfortunately is because they base their fees on the amount of your estate. So it can be 20, 30, 40% of your estate that they will take as a payment for that service. Well, that's a bit much. You know what I mean? Like, even if you have absolutely nobody, I would much rather leave 90% of my estate to a charitable organization or than leave half with a law firm or a bank that God knows has more profits than they know what to do with it, right? So I wish that we could do that service, because I've met quite a few people in these last 6 or 7 years that I would have been honored to be an executor for that. But unfortunately, I can't, right?
Right, yeah, it makes good sense, because if you've made contact with, say, your funeral home and you have good rapport with the people and you trust them, it would make obvious sense to me, I would hire someone like yourself. But,
yeah. Unfortunately, Memories is a part of a massive corporation, right? So we probably have a legal department that doesn't do anything but just discuss how can we prevent any possible liabilities to the funeral home. So I can just imagine me being an executor for one of you guys here, and the legal department would have a hissy fit of epic proportions.
I was just going to say, I got a lawyer that's helping me out with this.
Yeah, there you go. If you have a lawyer that's helping you with that, for sure, yeah.
And that's one thing, I think, particularly for our community, a lot of 2S LGBTQ may not have those connections with their families or that sort of thing. So that is something that we need to look into. I know that for myself, the investment firm that handles my pensions and that sort of stuff, they'll be my executor for 1%.
Oh,
and
so you can find places that are not going to actually.
Yeah, and that's because I've had my investments with them for a long time. But being an executor, if somebody asks you to be an executor, the first reaction is to say, I'm honored.
Yeah.
But your second reaction would be, what's the work involved? The reason I've chosen my investment firm is to avoid my brother and my sister having to do all of that work. And so it's a choice. But if you could find out, out a little bit more about the executors and what possibilities there are for the next session, that would be really
we'll definitely chat about that for sure with my friend Tracy here.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's going to have some insight about that, and I'm going to do a little bit of research just to see why not, right? Because that would be an interesting answer to have. So thanks, Joan, for asking that.
Yeah. Any other questions? None? Oh, Jan has a question. Oh, go ahead, Jan.
As always, you're most interesting, Dusko. It's wonderful to have you back again with us. Hearing Joan's discussion about executors, it sounds to me like there's a potential for private industry or individuals to take on those roles. That it seems like there's a market for it. I'm just so impressed that you offer that travel and transportation protection. I'm gonna see you in the spring and get all signed up for that. That's just brilliant. I heard of, oh, just to be clear, I am not here on vacation. I am here and I'm living my life.
Sure, she's not.
She's on vacation.
But
Like you believe that, come on.
But I've heard of a person dying in Mexico, for example, and to get a death certificate, they had to have their marriage certificate, and then that marriage certificate had to be translated into Spanish, and then the death certificate had to be done in Spanish. It took, this is Sherry McKibben, by the way, everybody else in the group. It took a long, long time for her wife, Karen, without the help of the funeral home. Karen accomplished a miracle in like a week, which probably would have taken a long, long time. So if your company offers this protection in every country in the world, you just have a wealth of knowledge, because every country does it a little bit differently.
That's correct, yeah.
It's very impressive.
It is not just to handle the legal matters, but it's to prevent a massive amounts of money, right? Like, I'll give you an example. When I left Edmonton for a while, I was working in Prince George for the same company. And I've met a elderly couple from Croatia that unfortunately their son was in Croatia and he died in Croatia. So funeral home helped them with organizing the transportation and everything else. We contacted the funeral home in Croatia that actually helped with the embalming, with everything else that needed to be done in order for us to send that body back to Canada, right? So first of all, the embalming rules are different in every country, right? So in Croatia, the funeral homes do not do embalming. They're done by the hospitals. The hospital, it's never done over there, right? Like in Croatia, when a person dies, within 2 days, they're buried. So there's no need for embalming, right? We insisted on embalming because the parents wanted to do an open casket service in Prince George, right? They wanted to say their goodbye to their son. Their community of Croatians up there wanted to say their goodbyes. They sent their son in a hermetically sealed casket that we had to actually break into physically, like with tools, because we were not able to open it. It was just hermetically sealed. They welded it, like, for some reason. The casket that they sent, so we couldn't use that. They ended up buying a second casket in Canada to be able to display their son. We had to do two embalming twice to bring the body to the actual, normal way of looking. As strange as that sounds, because when you're dead, you're dead. But there was a lot more work that needed to be done than necessary. So they ended up paying somewhere around $15,000-$16,000 to actually bring their son home. The reason why it was so expensive was because the airlines will charge you per weight, right? They charge per pound. And this casket that they sent us was a solid lead. So you can imagine how much that was, like 5,000 pounds just to do. There are little things like that, right? So if we can help with in any way, shape, or form in organizing that, we're all for it.
Larry, you have a question?
Tremendous.
Or a comment, the early days of HIV, too many of us had more experience than we would have liked to have had. And I recall a friend who died in Thailand, and I was the executor of his estate. Fortunately, that was the one thing he had done, was appointed an executor, so that to try to get the body back home, I should say, the costs were absolutely astronomical. The Department of External Affairs, as it then was involved, and I made a decision that I wasn't going to try to get HIV-infected ashes across to Central Park, which is where he wanted the ashes spread, but that the Gulf of Thailand would do. And we left him there, and I hope he was happy with that arrangement. But if there'd be no one with any authority, I don't know what would have happened. Certainly wouldn't be any
But you can certainly attest to the work that had, I've
Needed
been
to
an
be done,
executor as well, and it's not, as I say, the first reaction is, I'm honored, and the
Yeah.
second reaction is, let me check my schedule and see how much work I've got.
It is not easy, and it depends on the circumstances that you're dealing with. Like, I always mention this as an example. This gentleman was an executor for his sister's estate. I think her husband died, so she remarried. She had 3 kids from the first marriage and left 25% of her estate to each, like a child and a spouse. Well, one of the 3 sons was contesting her will, and they've been in court for 4 years. There's nothing left out of the estate for anybody. But the son just was so stubborn and so against this stepdad that he chose to squander everything on lawyers instead of just agreeing with it. And this poor gentleman that's been executor for 4 years, he cannot close the estate because of the pending law case, right? So
Michael, I see you've got a question. Go ahead.
And so, just a short one, in terms of the travel insurance, what about if you die on a cruise ship?
Cruise ships, they have very nice cooling facilities where we can store you until we can actually come and get you.
Yeah.
But it works the same way, like you're talking like a little bit of an extreme emergency, shall we say, right?
Yeah.
So the procedure with that would be that the body would be obviously stored within the cruise ship until the first next port, and then the funeral home would arrange for the body to be picked up at that port, right, and taken care of further, right?
I just can't imagine the logistical challenges that your firm looks after throughout the world, like just these simple challenges that.
We're not that smart. I wish I can say that we are, but it's actually contracted to somebody that specializes in medical removals and the deceased removals and stuff like that. So we kind of put it in their hands because they have expertise in handling that stuff. We just handle the funeral side, right?
Sure. Okay, Jan, I see you've got your hand up, and go ahead.
Michael's got me thinking, so what happens if you die on an airplane or a train?
It's the same thing.
Cremation.
Yeah.
Same thing. With the plane, and thanks Jeff for mentioning that, it basically depends on what happens with the plane after that.
Well, what country are you in?
No,
I guess it's the country that the plane lands in, I think.
I would imagine, yeah. Yeah, because the jurisdiction up there is a little bit different, right? You're in no man's land. Or no man's air.
Listen, it's 5 minutes to 12. Larry, do you have a?
Not a question, just to say that next week, the topic will be given by Cindy Gordon from the Edmonton Hard of Hearing Association on the subject of hearing loss in the elderly. So that may be of interest to people. And then, as you've heard, Dusko, with a colleague and a state lawyer, will be here in 2 weeks' time to give a talk focusing on the executor.
Okay, yeah, and I just want to add in, from a social work perspective, one of our biggest concerns is isolation of seniors, social isolation of seniors. And it's shown that a loss of hearing, it makes it more difficult for people to talk to you, for you to understand what people are saying. And that is, for quite a few seniors, the route to isolation. So I just throwing in that editorial as to why you might want to dial in next week. So thank you so much, Dusko. I
Thanks for having me.
genuinely appreciate this. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Thank you for those online who have attended. In the past, we used to leave the Zoom link open in case any of you online wanted to chat for a little while after it's over while we're enjoying cookies and coffee. Just let you know what you're missing. So if you would like, I will keep the Zoom link open, but I'll turn off the microphone here in the room so that you can chat. And when I see that there's nobody chatting online anymore, I will close down the Zoom session. Does that sound good for everybody? Okay. So again, thank you so much. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. The package, the planning details, I will send out to everybody, to all attendees on Sunday afternoon, and then Monday you'll get your normal meeting link for the following Thursday.
Thanks, guys. Take
Thanks for
care.
attending.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Aging with Pride, love ya.
Okay, bye-bye.